Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to the absolute shocker of the Computer Rapid Chess Championships in 2024 that you can follow now on chess.com. We have here now a crazy game between the newest version of Stockfish, the powerful Stockfish 17 against Leela C0 in an amazing Alapin variation of the Sicilian defense. And what's so shocking about this game is that actually Stockfish lost the game with the white pieces in a much better pre-arranged opening. You know that the organizers are always pre-arranging some openings and then the engines have to play one game with the white pieces and then one game with the black pieces. And actually in both of these games, Leela C0 won the game. We have to also mention here Stockfish has a decisive result against Leela C0. Stockfish is still the most powerful chess engine in the world. It has 23 points now more than Leela C0 in the super final. It's not the point about that, but this game that I'll show you now shows actually a huge weakness in Stockfish games. It's actually when Stockfish is playing this blocked out pawn structures. When Stockfish is playing blocked out position, it's simply not so powerful like Leela C0. I have covered already many times some games when Leela C0 and Stockfish played some blocked out games when there's simply no pawn movement. Then Stockfish has really tough time to find the best solutions, the best sidelines, the best variations. In one game that we have also covered, I think it was in Benoni game, Stockfish managed to somehow lock its own rook, and then the rook was simply paralyzed by Leela C0. Stockfish couldn't move then the rook, and Leela C0 again won the game with the black pieces. So I think Stockfish needs improvements when it comes to this positional, really blocked out structures. Sometimes Stockfish, as I said, simply doesn't find the best solutions. When it comes to pure tactics, there's nothing that we can compare really with Stockfish. But in these blocked out positions, you see now Leela C0 won the game with the white pieces, but then also with the black pieces, which is really crazy. As I mentioned, also here Stockfish is still in the lead. It's not the point about that, but you see now, as I said, the huge positional problems of the newest version of Stockfish. So let's see now the game with the white pieces here. Leela C0, Stockfish opened with the move e4. Leela's response was c5, c3, the Alapin variation, d6, d4, knight to f6. We have f3. This was still prearranged by the organizer. Queen to c7, and now bishop to e3. What here Stockfish is trying to do is, of course, to have this really compact situation in the center of the board. Wants to, of course, to develop the knight, bishop to d3, knight to e2 castling, and then of course to have this at least mobile pawn structure in the center, having also a nice development with the minor pieces. Knight from b to d7, queen to d2, g6. We're moving now this move a little bit faster because they were prearranged by the organizer. Knight to e2, bishop to g7, and now g4. And the last move that was prearranged was now the move e5, which is of course not a good continuation. A better choice is here maybe to launch immediately flank attack with b5, then b4 to simply put pressure here. We have this Dashko bishop that's of course supporting here the potential attack. Then you castle, play something like bishop to b7, and I would say here black is pretty solid. But e5 leads into complications because here of course Stockfish played d5. Stockfish has now the space advantage, has already also attacked here the king side with the move g4. Is trying, of course, if you castle too early, maybe to play even sort of attack bishop to h6, then h4, h5, trying of course maybe clear the h file and build a rook and queen batter, and in some lines of course deliver checkmate. So this is now, I think, the normal strategic goal for white here. Here finally Leela continues with the move b5. The move that we have seen should have been played previously, but e5 was then the prearranged move, and now the engines are calculating this position for themselves. So we have now the move h4. Stockfish continues now the pressure. Knight to b6, knight to g3. We have now the move a6, protecting now the pawn. Here that was attacked by the light square bishop. We have h5, h6, and now after b3 we have now bishop to d7 here by Leela c0, and Stockfish continues now with bishop to d3. And I wanted to show you now the differences in white in the games when Leela played with the white pieces and also when Stockfish played with the white pieces. Now in this game, after move bishop to d3 and g5, Stockfish continued with bishop to c2, rook to b8, and then bishop to d3. In the other game, I wanted to show you, it was a different approach in the same position. Again, h5 here. This is now the game that Leela, or the reverse game that Leela won with the white pieces against Stockfish. h5, knight to b6, then knight to g3, then b3, and now after bishop to d3, we are reaching now the same position. We have now the move g5, and now Leela played king to f1 and even sacrificed here the bishop for a pawn, and then had at least some tactical opportunities, had some attacking chances on the king side. This tactic, bishop to g5, is very important because you see now after potential a takes g5, the position is not so blocked out anymore. Okay, Leela sacrificed some material, but at least the position is not so static, it's not so compact. Now you see Stockfish will have a tough time after bishop to d3. You saw Leela play this approach with king to f1, then sacrificing the bishop on g5. Stockfish, I think, here allowed simply two blocked out position. Now this whole concept with bishop to g5 is obviously not working because Leela played this defensive maneuver with the move knight to h7 and has now good, I would say, a compact position on the king side. Nothing really can happen on this side of the board. And you see now the position is getting more and more blocked out, and suddenly Stockfish doesn't know what to do. Stockfish is, as I said, simply not the most powerful chess engine, I would say, in this types of positions. So the position is so static that Stockfish is searching now for opportunities. Knight to d2, knight to f6, bishop to f2, a5. Stockfish is trying, of course, to open now the queen side somehow. That's now the only side that where you can make something. Here on this side of the board, you cannot do anything. You can maybe hop with your knight, or like we have seen in this game where Leela played with the white pieces, you can just maybe sacrifice something on g5. But even if you try to again attack it somehow, again, I think knight to h7, protecting the pawn on g5 would then solve again all of the tactical problems on the king side. So I would say the king side is now really paralyzed. There's only a certain flexibility that something can happen maybe here on the queen side. So after move a4, b4 by Leela, Stockfish took, Leela took, and now a5. You see, at least somewhere something is moving. But this is, I think, simply not enough. Again, the Stockfish engine evaluates this position as a much better position for white. It gives even a 1.3 evaluation in white's favor, so it's a huge advantage when we think about the hard. Whenever Stockfish had such a huge advantage, Stockfish usually won the games. But you see now the position is not so easy to play. Knight to c8 by Leela, Stockfish castles. Leela is trying to maneuver the knight, is of course trying to get the knight now on this beautiful d4 square. Leela notice now a huge gap in a white position. Knight to c4, Leela played bishop to b5, knight to f5, and now Leela gave up now the bishop for a knight, which actually, when you think about it harder, makes sense, because in blocked out positions the knights are even slightly better than the bishops. Now after queen to c4, notice that the bishop here of white is simply neutralized. It's blocked out by its own pawn structure, and now Leela has some chances maybe to get the knight here, to get also maybe the knight here, wherever the position is, and not wherever the position is, of course, allowing black to move. Rook from f to c8 now by Leela c0. Leela is not rushing here. Queen to c1. If you try here knight to g7, then after king to g7, this wouldn't be also, I think, a good position for white, because now you have suddenly two bishops that are blocked out, that are simply immobile. I'm not sure how you're going to include now these bishops into the game, so not really a good trade of pieces. This move knight to g7 would have been here by white. So that's why queen to c1. Stockfish again searches maybe for opportunities to sacrifice something here around the square g5. We have now queen to d8, king to h1. Now Leela is trying also maybe to maneuver the bishop here to d8, maybe finally get it somehow into the game, because on this side of the board it's simply also blocked out by this dark square pawn structure. We have now a6, knight to d7, queen to d2. Leela maneuvers the rook now. Stockfish is also maneuvering the pieces, not allowing, of course, this knight to b5 move to happen for Leela c0. Maybe Leela should have tried this idea to go with knight to b5, but then probably Stockfish would give up then the bishop for a knight. So Leela is waiting for this chance maybe later in the later stage of the game. After rook to c7, queen to e2, we have now king to h8, and now Stockfish is again maybe searching for some tactics here. Knight to b6, bishop to f2. Stockfish has to now stay on this diagonal because also there is a certain threat if maybe black continues with the move c4. So if c4 happens now, then of course, obviously, first of all, bishop takes b6 will happen. So that's why very also hard to play position now for black. We have now knight to d7, Stockfish moves the rooks, Leela moves the king, and now you see the engines are having a really tough time to find any solutions here because the position is so blocked out. Stockfish cannot really support this pawn, cannot really do something. So the position is static. I really expected this game to end with a draw, but Stockfish is battling. Leela is also battling. First of all, knight to b6, again preparing this move c4, queen to a1, f6. Leela improves the position on the king side, and again Stockfish plays bishop to e3. But nothing can be really done. Knight is attacking something. It is well placed, but it doesn't have support. You cannot just sacrifice the knight on h6 and hope for the best because there's simply no support by the other pieces. We have rook to h7, rook to f2, knight to d7, again improvement of the king. And you see now the engines played here really a couple of maneuvers which we really cannot really understand what's going on now on the board when we watch now this game from a human level. They're simply trying to find the best squares, the optimal positions for their pieces. Leela c0 has to hold, of course, this side of the board because this pawn here is very advanced. So Leela cannot also do anything on the queen side. We have now rook to a2, bishop to f8, queen to e2, bishop to e7, and now rook to a5. Stockfish is desperately trying to find an entrance square to find any attacking chances on the queen side. Queen to d2, bishop to f8. You see, whenever there is maybe a certain threat that something could happen on this side of the board, Leela immediately neutralizes the threat with bishop to f8. What Leela, as we mentioned, would love to do is somehow get this bishop into the game, maybe through this diagonal. We have bishop to f2, bishop to e7, knight to e3. Stockfish is searching again for opportunities, and we have already a certain repetition in the position. We have now rook to a5, knight to c8, again bishop to e7. Leela is not rushing, is probably calculating this position as an equal one. Although again, the Stockfish engine evaluates this position as a 1.1 plus evaluation here for white because of the spaces probably that white gained. So we have to notice white has, of course, a better space advantage. White has at least a better activity with his pieces, but nothing spectacular is going on. I'm not sure how white can even break here black's position. Knight to b6, rook to a5. You see again a repetition. We have now again this bishop to f8 idea, rook to c1, queen to d7, bishop to f2, and now comes after queen to e8, the critical moment of the game. Here Stockfish had it enough and tried now somehow to squeeze something out of this position. Here maybe a better choice instead of this move f4 that Stockfish played, really risky choice, was to play now the move queen to d2, and then after bishop to e7, again probably the game would lead into this bishop to d8, again maybe repetition and probably a drawish position. But Stockfish rushed it here. Stockfish probably miscalculated this position, played now the move f4, played a risky gambit, played a risky sacrifice of the pawn. We have g takes f4, and now bishop to h4. Stockfish says, okay, maybe I can finally do something around the square f6. Leela covers that. Stockfish includes now the rook into the game, and now knight to b6, bishop to f2, rook to f7, and now bishop to h4. Again, a repetition, king to h3. The fish is improving now the position of the king. Knight to a8, and now bishop to b5. So what Stockfish actually would love now to happen is this position: knight to b5, rook to b5, rook to b5, queen to b5, where the knight would be much better than the bishop. Here the bishop would be just a part of the pawn chain. Black would have a tough time again to play with this bishop, and now suddenly this bishop is at least attacking something. The queen is a little bit overloaded to the defense of this pawn. So this is the position that you want to get in this blocked out pawn structures when you have the bishop that's covering the opposite color squares that your pawns are on. So here we have to mention, of course, in this scenario, black would be actually much worse because of this bad bishop on f8. So here that's why for bishop to b5, Leela is not rushing, plays now knight to c7, kicks away the bishop, bishop drops back, and again you should not take, then it is a similar position where you have the bad piece on f8 and the knight on f5 is well placed, and also the bishop is very dangerous. This is a dangerous pass pawn, and there are also several light score problems then that black has to handle. So that's why for bishop to c6, again Leela is not rushing, plays rook to f7, bishop to f2, knight to a8, bishop to b5, knight to c7. Again a repetition. Leela improves the position of the king, and now queen to c4, rook to b6, hitting the bishop, bishop to b7, and now knight to b5. Finally Leela comes through, I would say. Finally Leela is having at least some kind of a chance to get the knight maybe here on c3, or on maybe even a more powerful square on d4. And I think from this point on, the game is becoming in black's favor. Again, the Stockfish engine evaluates this position as a +1 better position for white because of the spaces, because of the space advantage. But when it comes to really I would say positional understanding, when it comes to pure activation of the pieces, I would say I would love to play this position more now from black's perspective, because you have now the opportunity to get your knight on d4. You can maybe then later also include this other knight into the game. So suddenly the knights are dancing all over the board. Suddenly you see why the knights are better really in this blocked out, in this fully blocked out pawn structure. So here queen to d3, now comes knight to a3. There is a certain problem, of course. There are maybe some tactical threats against this rook on a5. We have king to h8. So far rook to b7 or something is not working, because after a takes b7 and queen takes a5, then the promotion will happen. But this tactical threat is always present to maybe do something against this loose rook on a5. We have king to h8, bishop to e1, rook to h7, rook to a4, queen to e8, and now again after a couple more moves, rook to f7, queen to f2, and now comes this idea knight to c2. And here suddenly Leela comes through. I would say knight to c2 comes of course with a threat against the rook. Rook drops back, and now finally knight to d4. The position is cemented. Suddenly also the knight is in danger on f5, the piece that was very useful through the whole game, but now it's simply endangered. We have now knight to d4, c takes d4. Stockfish created now, Leela c0 created here 2 pass pawns, which are very now tough to defend. Stockfish had here maybe a chance to pick up this pawn, rook to b4, but then it would lead into this line where queen to b5 will happen. You try maybe rook to c4, then bishop to e7. Suddenly look at this, the bishop will come then on d8, then will come on a5, we'll trade it off, and suddenly you're continuing the game again. If you could just imagine maybe this scenario without this dark square bishops, where maybe Leela could somehow trade off the dark square bishop, then you continue again with the bad bishop that's simply stuck by its own pawns. And again, I think black would always find a way how to include the knight into the game, maybe on c3 then afterwards, and maybe you can attack this pawn, you start to push this pawn, the queen is holding maybe this pawn here, rook can also always cover the 8th rank. So suddenly I think the position is collapsing slowly but surely here for Stockfish. After c takes d4, Stockfish didn't go for this pawn because then of the potential attack. Stockfish continued with bishop to e1, rook to g7, queen to f3, queen to d8. We have king to h3, rook to g8. Again, improvement of the bishop, rook to b5, rook to c4, and now rook to c5. Going for the trades of rooks, which is I think a solid idea going into the fully endgame stage, because as we mentioned, Leela c0 created here this passers on the d and f file. We have now finally rook takes b4, queen to a5, queen to d1, and now Leela c0 comes up with a great plan. Now when the game turned here towards the queen side, Leela noticed that of course white's king is a little bit endangered and played down the beautiful f5. Great move by Leela c0. This position is now exploding on this side of the board. What should you do? If you play here g takes f5, then the queen is coming. There is also the checkmate threat. Then you attack the bishop. Then maybe the queen could come into the game. So very tough position then to face here for white. After move f5, we have e takes f5. But now look at this. Leela finally connected even 3 passers here with this beautiful f5 move. And I think this is really, I would not say game over, but in AI chess, this is almost an unbreakable position. Here for black. So after e takes f5, bishop to f6, again preparing to let this pawn roll, supporting it, of course, here. This also pawn on d4. We have bishop to d2, Leela drops back, we have queen to c, rook to c5, and now queen to c5. Look at this. White has also these passers here, but they're not mobile. Look at this. The knight on a7 is always holding this pawn. Basically, on this side of the board, Stockfish cannot do anything, and suddenly Leela is having here the only chance to make something in the game. This pawn is weak. Anyway, backward pawn, you cannot push it. Bishop is holding also the pawn on f5 here. Great positional understanding by Leela c0. Rook to c4, queen drops back, bishop to e1, queen comes here, and now a rook to g7, queen to d1, rook to e7, supporting again this pawn. Suddenly there's a huge threat of the move e4, bishop to f2, queen to a5, rook to c1, queen to a2, hitting the bishop. King improves here on g7, rook to a1, and now queen to a3. Queen to b2, we have now rook to b1, and now finally queen to a3. So here Stockfish, I think, would love maybe even to trade off the queens. The queen on a3 is really unpleasant to handle. The king is always endangered on the third rank. Rook to a1, again Stockfish is trying to trade off the pieces, but Leela c0 drops back, keeps simply the queens on the board. We have queen to f3, king to f7, and now b4 here by the fish, trying finally to do something on the queens, and again not a good move. Maybe here rook to c6 is slightly better, but then again look at this, there is even a beautiful counterattack with e4, and if you take, then we have this one. It comes with an attack against the bishop. You're trying to do something like this, and when we play the move d3, it's simply game over. Even after, instead of this move rook to b6, if you try queen to f4 here, then we pick up this one, and again it's a messy position because of this two mobile pawns that are rolling here on this side of the board. So here really intense battle. b4, even a worse continuation here for Stockfish. Leela continues simply with queen to b5, and again has this opportunity to finally play e4, bishop to h4, queen takes b4. The position is slowly but surely collapsing. Bishop to f6, king to f6, rook to d1, and now after queen to a5, look at this pawn is blocked out. Still we're waiting, of course, for the e4 move. We have now queen to g2, queen to c3, first a check. We have now rook to g7, bishop to c6, queen to e3, bishop to e8, rook to g8, and now finally f3. The knight is also coming now into the game, so you see obviously game over here for the fish. We have now rook to d3. It's just a bad move, of course. If you try rook to queen takes d3, that was Leela's that was Stockfish last idea how to spice up the game, because if you pick up now the rook on d3, then obviously if g5 is going to happen, you step back, and then with f6, of course, the queen will be lost. So, but okay, after rook to d3, Leela is not falling for that. Plays now queen to c1. We have queen to f3, and now knight to c3 with the preparation. Finally, this e4 goal is Leela c0 is trying to make. We have now queen to f2, and now knight to e4. Even we have queen to e2, knight to g5, cementing the position, really keeping the position fixed. Look where the knight was and where it's now here on square g5. Beautiful maneuver by Leela c0. We have now rook to d1, queen to f4, rook to f1, d3. Great move again. If you play rook takes f4, then d takes e2 is winning the game, because you cannot get the rook behind, and you cannot also use the square, so this pawn will be promoted. So that's why after d3, queen to g2, we have now queen to b4, queen to f2. Leela pushes the pawn further, rook to h1, and now of course the rook is coming into the game. Look how blocked out this position is. The king on f6 is playing a beautiful blockade here. It's not allowing this pawn to be advanced. Leela c0 is dominating now. Look at this, queen to g2, rook to c1, rook to h3, d1 the promotion, and after a couple more moves it was game over. We had this check, queen covers, and now after queen to e4, it was a beautiful checkmate with the rook and queen's activity. So great game, I would say. This game shows us actually how you can win in the only way a game against Stockfish. You can probably just win it in some blocked out positions, or when the when the game is when the opening is so prearranged, is so bad, when the engines are basically forced to play sort of a forced lost line. But I think this game shows us really the power of Leela C0 also, that it has a great positional understanding. It always finds, I think, the best activities of the minor pieces, is understanding when to go with the knights on into the game, when to go with the bishops into the game. So it was a great game here by Leela C0. Also, although, as we mentioned, Stockfish has a decisive lead in the super final, has 23 points more than Leela C0, but look at this. Leela C0 won with the white pieces, the same position they played, but also the reverse game with the black pieces. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Finally, Stockfish 17 lost the game with the white pieces, which is not happening so often, but we have seen it also in the previous versions, that no one is unbeatable. So it gives us also hope that the engine says still can improve. So this is not the last version of Stockfish. This is not the last version of Leela C0. The engines are improving in every day. So this is not, of course, the final product of chess. So, okay, if you want to see some other beautiful AI chess games, check out our commented chess games played by computers. Here's the link of our playlist. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos. And what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.